Hi everybody, welcome back to the workshop. Now this is shellac, and it is probably the most versatile finish that you can use in your woodworking or wood turning. And in this episode, we're going to go through all the different processes of turning these flakes into a product that you can use to help create some stunning finishes. Let's get started. Okay, so first of all, let's explain exactly what shellac is. Shellac is made by the female lac bug, and it is an excretion that it puts over the top of its eggs in order to protect them. Now these eggs are laid on the branches of a tree. The female lac bug excretes this material over the top of it. It goes hard and it protects them while they grow. Eventually, when they've grown, they break out of the shell to continue the life cycle, and the local farmers prune the trees to gather the lac that is left on the branches. It's then go through various different processes, and we end with what we've got here today. Now we've got three different types here. We've got garnet shellac, button shellac, and blonde shellac. Each one of these has gone through a slightly different process and has slightly different qualities. The garnet shellac you'll find more used by furniture restorers because it's quite a deep colour. The button shellac is the common one, and most people will be familiar with this. And the blonde shellac is basically button shellac, but it has all the wax removed. Okay, now in order to turn these into a product that we can use in our wood, we have to suspend it in a fluid. And the fluid we're going to use is an alcohol. Now, personally, I use isopropyl alcohol, but you can use denatured alcohol or whatever is most available to you. But please make sure that you use an alcohol which is as close to 100% as possible. If it has too much of a water content, then it does run the risk of darkening or staining the wood that you're putting it on. It also slows the drying time. Now the ratio I'm going to make up for each one of these three shellacs is 20%. So if, for instance, I have 400 milliliters of alcohol in this bottle, I will be adding 20% by weight, so that would make it 80 grams of shellac. And that will give us a 20% mix. Now shellac can take a while to dissolve in the alcohol, so I'm going to grind some up with my pestle and mortar just to make life a little bit easier. Okay, so I've measured out 50 grams of each type of shellac, and we're going to be mixing this in with 250 milliliters of isopropyl alcohol. Now I'm just going to grind these up first of all, just to help them dissolve that little bit quicker. If you've got a coffee grinder, then you can do this with that as well. Now, you know, I like experimenting with different techniques and things like that. And a lot of people ask me how I get started and where I get my information from. Now, a big help in my learning journey has been the Woodworkers Guild of America, who I'm very proud to say are sponsoring the video today. Woodworkers Guild of America is like having an entire woodworking library at your fingertips. They've got a huge range of videos and resources for woodworkers at every level, from complete beginners to experienced makers like many of you watching today. In the past, I've used their website to help learn skills like jig making for the bandsaw, or for creating finishes and polishes for the woodwork, using routers, and how to process green material. For me as a visual learner, their videos are a lifesaver. Being dyslexic, I've always learned better by watching than by reading, and their expert instructors really know how to break things down in a clear and practical way. It's like having a workshop mentor on call whenever you need one. Whenever I'm working on a new project, I always go to them first to see what their experts have to say. And here's the best part. For the first 1,000 of you to click on the link in the description, you'll get a full year of premium membership to Woodworkers Guild of America for only $1.49. With that, you'll unlock the library of tutorials, live Q&As, and an amazing community of like-minded woodworkers. So if you're ready to explore new skills and take your woodworking to the next level, then click the link below and join Woodworkers Guild of America. It's a small investment with a big return for your craft.
Offer only applies to new members.
Okay, so there's our shellac nicely ground up. And now I'm going to put 250 milliliters of isopropyl alcohol into these three jugs, and we can start getting it dissolved. Shellac has been used as a wood finish for hundreds of years, but it also has other uses as well. Initially, when it was first discovered a few thousand years ago, it was used as a dye, but since then it's been used in the food industry, and it's also had its time insulating electronic components, as it has a fantastic resistance to moisture. Okay, there we are. Now you should always add the shellac to the isopropyl and not the other way around, because it does change the volume of the fluid. Okay, so I'll add the shellac flakes carefully. I'm sure you can make a better job than I'm doing. I'll put the top on. Before I go any further, I'm just going to write on the bottle exactly what I've got in here, so I don't get them mixed up. And this is garnet. Put a date as well. This is button shellac. One more thing actually to add. This is a 20% mix. When we start to use this, you'll get a better idea of the different percentages to use and when, but do not worry, I shall take you through everything you need to know. But if you haven't used shellac before, I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to want to try it. It really is the most useful finishing product you can ever imagine. Right, and this is blonde. Jan 25. My pen's running out. There's back, and it's a 20% mix. Right, and give these a bit of a shake, and then we're going to let them dissolve all the flakes. This could take a few hours, it could take a few days. A lot of it depends on temperature, so I'm going to take these into the house while they all dissolve. Right, I shall bring you back when they're all done. Okay, it's the next day and all our mixtures have dissolved, so let's do a quick test on these 3 pieces of beech, which I have sanded to 240 grit. Now there's many ways to apply shellac, but in this instance I'm just going to use a bit of clean white tissue. We'll squirt a bit on and then rub it on. Now this is the garnet. Don't use the same tissue for different types of shellac. This is the button. And the last one is the blonde. Now all we're waiting for is for the alcohol to evaporate. As soon as that goes, then these will be ready for another coat. So I'm going to give these another 4 coats each, and we'll see if you can notice much of a colour difference between the 3. Okay, I've put 5 coats on each, and you can clearly see that there is a major colour difference between the garnet and the button. Not quite so much between the button and the blonde, but we are dealing with beech, which is a mildish brown colour anyway. If you look at the cloths we use, then you can see a very, very big difference in the overall staining effect of the shellac. Now to put 5 coats on these 3 items, it only took me about 10 minutes. The one with the environment, the quicker these finishes will dry, which means that you can get lots of coats on very, very quickly. But obviously it depends on the ambient temperature in your workshop. Now this quick test was done with a saturation of 20%. Now that kind of ratio is very, very similar to what the Americans would call a 2-pound cut of shellac, and that is basically as thick as you really want to go. If you can go a bit thicker to a 3-pound cut or a 25% solution, but for that kind of mix you're dealing with a very resinous wood, or you want to seal a knot or something like that. At a 20% saturation it will really be classed as quite a thick polish. So what we're going to do now is thin a bit down and use it as a sealer. I generally use a shellac sealer on my bowls, and the percentage I use is about 10%. So to make up these 3 with a 10% mixture, we're going to use equal measures of the 20% with isopropyl alcohol again. So I'm going to add 75 milliliters to each one of these tubs, add another 75 milliliters of the 20% solution, and that will give us a 10% solution. I've already written my labels out, so I've got to make sure I put the right one in the right one. So that's garnet. Squeeze this in and top it up to 150 milliliters. And do the same with the button. And lastly with the blonde. Give them a bit of a shake. And there we have our wood sealer all nicely made. Now, although we're saying it's a sealer, there is nothing to stop you using this as a finish as well. The only difference would be is that you would need more coats. Now, I got asked the other day, why should you use a sealer? And there's quite a few reasons for it. First of all, it'll help even out the absorption variations of the wood. Sometimes if you've got drier or softer areas, you can apply a shellac finish and this will help even out those areas. It will help the final finish that you put on the piece to last longer. Don't forget, one very, very important quality of shellac is that it will take virtually any finish over the top of it. And if you've got two finishes that don't necessarily go together, then you can use one, then a layer of shellac, and then the other, and they will both stick nicely to shellac. It'll help reduce any staining of the wood. It'll help prevent any grain raising. It certainly minimises the amount of finish that you would need if you were to go on with a wax or an oil finish. And as I just mentioned, it is an excellent preparation for any specialty finishes like a resin coat or a polyurethane or anything like that. So what else can it do? At the moment we've got 10% mixes, but we can go one step further. Now I've just got another bottle here, and I'm going to make a 5% mixture. $50 milliliters of the 10% blonde, and another 50 milliliters of isopropyl alcohol. And what we have now is a very, very useful pre-stain. A pre-stain is a fluid that helps even out the variations in the wood. So when you do come to stain it a different colour, that colour will hopefully match all the way across the piece. And we'll give that a quick test now. Okay, I've got two more pieces of beech. 1 and 2, and 2 will have pre-stain. Again, nice clean cloth. Give this a mix onto the cloth, and then onto the wood. Right, I'll just give that a short while to dry. Okay, the pre-stain's had a chance to dry. We're going to do this in as scientific way as I can. I've got a small tub of spirit blue from Chestnuts. I'm going to put the cloth on the top, hold it over for about a second, come back, and then use this cloth to wipe number 1. Then I'll use a fresh piece of cloth, do exactly the same on number 2. I'm not sure there's going to be much of a difference, but we'll give it a go. I'll do exactly the same with this one. There we go. Now I attempted to use exactly the same amount as dye on the cloth for both. This one has covered more successfully, although it has seemed to have been less successful at getting into the grain, into the middle. I'm not sure if that's a technique or if that's the wood itself. Oh, it's the wood itself, because that's doing the same there. Now that's drying. Okay, so it does help it go on a little bit smoother. But like I say, this isn't something I do an awful lot of, so this was a kind of a potluck test. Right. Now, staining bits of wood and applying finish to small offcuts is one thing. So let's have a go at some real life situations. I've got 3 walnut blanks here. They're all taken from the same slab, so they're as identical as I can get. And we'll attempt to do 3 different finishes. We're going to use one with a normal shellac, a second with a blonde, And this one we're going to use a different type of finish, but its main component will be shellac. Okay, so I've got 3 pieces of English walnut. We need to turn each one to get it to a point we can do a test on the 3 different types of finishes we're going to use. Okay, that's the first one on the lathe. I'm going to try and turn them all the same. Please note the word try. They'll all have the same size foot, recess, and hopefully the same shape up the side. When we've got all 3 done, I'll sand them to the same level and then we can start trying out the finishes. Okay, that's one done. Quickly give it a wipe over with isopropyl. Just 2 more to do. Right, I'll bring you back as soon as those other 2 are complete. Okay, that's all 3 done. I'll just wipe this last one off with isopropyl to get the dust off, and then we can get started. Okay, so on this first one, we're going to use the button shellac. We're going to start off with the 10% sealer. We'll give it 1 medium coat. We're going to apply it with a tissue. We're going to let that dry, and then we're going to go over with an abrasive paste, and I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, we'll just let that dry. Okay, that's nice and dry. Now, the reason why we're going to go on with an abrasive paste next is because any fluid that you put onto the surface of a wood initially, as a sealer or anything else, will raise the grain a little bit. And also, as we're trying to get a nice fine finish on this, using abrasive paste, it'll do 2 things. First of all, it'll knock back any raised grain, but it'll also take the surface finish to a lot higher grit. I sanded up all these 3 pieces to 250 grit, and after the abrasive paste, then it should reach an equivalent of about 1000 grit. Now, where eye protection for this, we're using the Northern Grit abrasive paste. Apply it to the wood in circular motion. And then rub it in with the lathe spinning. Just a quick little squirt of isopropyl just to help remove any of the remaining grit. When this dries, we can go on with the final polish. Now for the final coats, we are going to go on with the 20% mix of button shellac, but there would be nothing really to stop us continuing on with the 10% mix, but we would need more coats. Now, in all the experiments so far, we've just been applying it with a paper towel, but the traditional method is to get some sort of absorbent material like t-shirt material, wrap that into some cotton or linen to make it a kind of a dabber. Just hold that in place with an elastic band. And then we can saturate that surface with our shellac and use that to apply it. And to apply a fair amount, let it get soaked in. That t-shirt material underneath is going to absorb all the excess. And then we'll just use this to evenly rub across the surface. This is slightly easier to use on a flatter piece, but it'll work just as well for our needs with this. Now at the start it will absorb the shellac you're putting on it quite quickly, but over time it will become full and it will sit in it. Okay, excellent. Right, when that's done, you can store these in a little pot to save it drying out. But if it does dry out, then all you have to do is remove it, squirt on a bit of isopropyl, and that'll reactivate it again. Right, we'll just let this dry, it won't take long, and then we'll come back and put on another coat. Okay, let's had a few minutes to dry and that's now fine. Now, it's really up to you. Check the surface finish, see how it's looking. If you wanted to, there's nothing to stop you going over it again with a very, very fine Scotch pad, just to even out any inconsistencies. After each time, of course, you will need to make sure the surface is clean again before you put on any more shellac. Okay, I'll get my little wad out of the box, freshen it up a little bit, and then go over. The idea with shellac is that you're trying to put on lots and lots of thin coats, and because it dries so quickly, this can be done really quite easily. It's not like a polyurethane finish or anything like that you need to put a coat on and then wait for 24 hours or anything like that. You can just wait until the alcohol flashes off and then carry on. Okay. Now you can keep on going, putting as many layers on as you want. The more layers you do, the more shine you'll get. Or alternatively, you can stop at this point and put a wax finish on or anything else. Shellac will pretty much stick to anything, so it really makes it a wonderfully versatile finish. Right, I'll let this dry. I'll go on with one more coat and I'll give it a little buff up. Okay, last coat. This will make 3. If you feel your pad starting to pull on the surface, it means that it needs more shellac on there. Okay, right, we'll let that one dry and then we'll give it a buff. Okay, that's all nice and dry, so just with a soft lint-free cloth. There we go. That really isn't bad at all. Right, let's take this one off and have a go with a blonde shellac. Okay, so here we are. Here's our blonde 20% and 10%. Now you may notice that this is a little bit lower than it was previously, but I did just use this on a project which went out last Tuesday. Okay, so we'll start off with the blonde sealer, 10% proof, 10% proof, 10% saturation. I'm wearing gloves for this. I don't usually when I'm doing bowl turning, but as I'm doing a reasonable amount, I put gloves on because it can stain your fingers. It is a dye after all. Right, we'll let that dry and then we'll come back again like the previous one with an abrasive paste. Okay, that's all dry, so I'll go back on with an abrasive paste like before. I'll rub this in. Okay, wipe off excess with isopropyl again. Now the isopropyl alcohol will remove a little bit of the shellac that we've already put on, but it's an incredibly small amount, so don't worry about it. Okay, that's all nice and dry, so we can go on with the blonde shellac. I'm going to apply it with a tissue this time. Let that dry. I'll apply it with a couple of coats and then we'll come back and we'll buff this one. And I think you'll agree, it is quite a nice finish. It's only taken us about 10 minutes. Right, last one. Okay, for this final piece, we're going to be using the garnet shellac for no other reason other than we haven't used it yet on one of these bowls. And we're going to be making up a finish which is known as OB Shine Juice. It's named after the gentleman who made it famous in America. Now we're going to start off in exactly the same way by putting on a base layer of shellac sealer, in this case our 10% garnet. We'll let this dry and then come back with the abrasive paste and I'll show you how to make your shine juice. Okay, that's all nice and dry, so back on with the abrasive paste. Rub this in again. Clean off once again with isopropyl, just to remove any of the abrasive grit that may be left on the piece. Right, I shall set up for making the shine juice. Okay, shine juice relies on 3 key ingredients. We've got isopropyl alcohol, our full strength shellac and oil, and these are mixed in equal parts. A lot of people use boiled linseed oil, but it really doesn't matter. All the oil is there for is to act as a lubricant. So what I'm going to do is mix in these 3 in equal measures. I'll do 50 ml of each one. I'll put the oil in. This is a walnut oil I'm using. And and then our garnet shellac. You could use any of your shellacs that you have made to make this up. It doesn't have to be garnet. And that's it. We now have shine juice. Now, as you see, it doesn't exactly mix very well, so you need to agitate it before you use it. And to apply it, we're literally going to hold a cloth against the piece and drip on our shine juice and just slowly spread it across the surface. Like the others, you can do as many or as few coats as you want. The more coats you do, the more shine you're going to end up with. Now, I've put this piece of cardboard down at the start because obviously you are putting a liquid onto something which is rotating and you will get splatters. Shake. I'm going to saturate the cloth a bit first. Just keep moving it over the piece slowly. If you feel it start to pull on the cloth, that means it's drying, and you may need to add a little bit more. Now, if you think about what we've mentioned as we've been going through this experiment, shellac can be made up in virtually any kind of percentage you want. You can make thick shellac, you can make it very, very thin. So it's just fun to have a play around with it to see what suits your needs best. And the same with the shine juice. I've got walnut oil because I personally prefer it. It's also nice and cheap from the supermarket. But you can use anything. You can use rice oil, mineral oil, boiled or normal linseed oil. You can use anything you want. Now, hopefully you can see on the surface of this piece the reflections from the lights are getting really quite sharp. And that shows us what kind of shine we're getting. And that's just one coat, one application. In, what's that taking us, 5 minutes? Okay, right, I'm going to put one more coat on because I can, and then we'll pull everything together and have a look at what we've done. Well, there we go, a complete introduction into the wonderful world of shellac. It really is one of those finishes that has so many different applications that it's hard to cover them all in one video, but we've done our best. We've gone through how to turn these raw flakes into a usable product. Now, we've talked about the different saturation levels and their uses. We've done a few experiments. First of all, the differences between garnet, button and blonde. I think in this light it's a bit easier to tell the difference between the three. We've looked at its use as a pre-stain, which is turned out more successful than I thought it would have been. Then we've talked about how to use it as a finish. This is the blonde one we did. This is the button. And this one, of course, is the OB shine juice. And that really does look rather amazing. Don't forget that one of the key aspects of getting a good finish on any piece of wood is the preparation down to how smooth the surface is. And as you can see, shellac has the ability to make for a fine finish all by itself, and it's been used as such for thousands of years. But if you wanted to carry on and put waxes and oils over the top, then they will adhere to shellac without a problem. So no matter what you do, you can help create a wonderful surface on your wood quite quickly and quite easily. Well, that's pretty much it for now. I'll leave a description in the text below as to the different measurements I used to create the different finishes. And I'll put a few links in there as well to where you can get hold of some shellac and isopropyl alcohol if you need it. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.